Congress has returned to session after the August recess. House Ag Committee Chair Glenn Thompson has been vocal about his goals to take committee action on a Farm Bill 2.0 in September to address elements not included in President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. I sat down with the chairman to discuss what's on his radar this fall: farm aid payments, tariffs, ag labor reform legislation, the USDA reorganization plan, and his vision for Farm Bill 2.0. To begin our conversation, USDA says farm income will increase this year, but primarily because of government payments and strong income in the livestock industry. I asked Chairman Thompson for his thoughts on the report and the farm economy right now.
Well, I mean, it's to be expected. The income is up. I think the part that compounds that is basically the actual commodity prices have been down. And that's the issue we need to address. We need to address that by expanding markets and also addressing the input costs. At the end of the day, it's not so important what your revenue is what your net is. It's the margin that is so important. So I wasn't surprised by that report. It was really interesting. They also, released the trade data for the past fiscal year, and we had a pretty tough first half of the fiscal year was really pretty tough coming out of October 1st in the last quarter of the Biden administration, and then the whole transition time with Trump. And it was interesting. I mean, trade was up by 8 million metric pounds, and which is good, but revenue was essentially flat. And part of that is the actual, it's the input costs, it's the headwinds that farmers are facing. So I think that's good information, that's great data, and really to have us focus, use that part of a root cause analysis to kind of inform now what do we need to do. And I know the next step that we need to do is Farm Bill 2.0, but it's also labor, it's continue to work cooperatively with the administration on trade, and so we got a lot of, we've had some great wins for America's #1 industry, agriculture, most essential industry, dating back to December, but we got a lot of work left to do as well.
I'm curious, we spoke earlier this week and you said that farm aid will be necessary this fall with the predicted record yields and the uncertainty around tariffs and trade. I'm curious, do you think that the farm income forecast lays a financial picture for you to advocate for those payments?
Yeah, I think it does. I was honestly, last December I was singing a different tune. I was really hoping that what we did, that $10 billion in economic harm, would have been sufficient. I wasn't going to fill in all the gaps, and we knew that. And I think that between the natural disaster assistance, everything that we've done, it really, from what I can tell, based on the data, about a third of the losses is what is covered. So I think there's more that we need to do. Food security is national security, and so I'll be advocating for investment. We honestly, I look at I don't know how much, a significant amount of money in tariffs that have been collected. I'm advocating that just a fraction of that money would be used to invest in our farmers to keep them financially stable going forward. I think things are really good. I think we're actually seeing an increase, obviously, in agriculture exports, the future is very promising. But I think there's a point here we're going to may have to do some assistance, and I think we need to be creative how we do that. I appreciate the trade process negotiations the president's using, and Jameson Greer that is leading. But I would say, if I don't know where we at, over at least $100 billion in tariff money, so a fraction that's been collected, that a fraction of that would be a great investment in actually in Farm Bill 2.0.
Yeah, and it's kind of a unique perspective maybe to use that tariff money. I mean, in the past, during the trade war during the first Trump administration, the Commodity Credit Corporation was used. So, I mean, do you kind of have a vision? You mentioned incorporating those payments into the Farm Bill 2.0, but a vision of how it will work to utilize that tariff revenue.
Yeah, and just a fraction of them. I think that's just a better way versus using the Commodity Credit Corporation, which is what we've done in the past. And I stated early on that, if this was needed, I mean, well over a year ago, I had made this statement. Let's say the beginning of after the election, predicting that agriculture trade will once again be something an administration will be working on. That we may face a situation like we did under Trump 45, and that we would be prepared with the CCC to make sure it's replenished in a way. But I think there are some other alternatives. Why wouldn't we keep the CCC, the integrity of it the way it is now, so they could do what it was originally designed for? It's not often we have a viable alternative. So that's something that that obviously we need to be working together, and certainly most importantly, I think working with the administration, to see how they feel about that.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Deputy Ag Secretary Stephen Baden mentioned at Farm Progress Show just last week, the balance of CCC is usually replenished in November. So, choosing to use tariff revenue to fund those payments, does that have anything to do with the balance of the CCC now? Well,
it will be replenished. It's just sort of a revolving credit card, I guess, and it's always, I think, to approximately $30 billion is what it's recharged to. But that's what we use to pay the risk management, the other basically legislative codified farm programs that we need to do. And so I think it would be important for certainty going forward that that fund remain robustly funded and ready to use for the farm programs, which we have made some great investments in with Farm Bill 1.0. And so it's just, I'm going to be an advocate of, I think it'd be a reward for the patience of our farmers. They recognize how important it is to have a president who cares about farming, cares about agriculture, advocates for agriculture trade. And the farmers are very patient, and they understand that disruption sometimes will interrupt markets for a short period of time. But I'm very confident in the Trump administration and that ultimately agriculture's, just like agriculture was the big winner under the Working Families Tax Cut Bill, new title, once called the One Big Beautiful Bill. I think our farmers in the end are going to be big winners when it comes to the President Trump-led trade.
Yeah, and you mentioned Farm Bill 1.0 and budget reconciliation. We've reported on an estimate that Farm Bill payments could exceed $15 billion for this year's crops because of the changes made in that. I'm curious how much more farmers will need.
I think what we did, thankfully, I'm very thankful for what we've done, actually, including both the $10 billion in December, the natural disaster aid, and the record investments, the biggest investments in farm, the farm programs, the safety net program since 2002. And so, we'll see. This is see how things progress. There's a lot of variables that are out there. The success of the trade programs, the trade negotiations. I think we really need. I'd love to see 3 trade agreements that are sealed, locked in, ready to go, that have tremendous impact on agriculture. I think we're getting close to that. Obviously, I think there's good signs given the fact that in the fiscal year, trade increased, agriculture trade by 8 million metric pounds. That's a good sign. Most of that gain, all that gain, has been after President Trump has come into office. So that's the right momentum. That's the right direction. But there's other things. We need to get Farm Bill 2.0 done, to provide certainty on the remaining parts. We need to address workforce. To make sure that there's certainty and affordability. I think some domestic market programs would be a determinant too, including year-round E15. It would go a long ways. A very positive, confident director on sustainable aviation fuel would be huge, because the variables are really interesting. One of the problems with the corn industry right now is financially is it was too good of a year. The yield was too high, that's it. That is this is agriculture is an interesting industry. It really comes down to simple economics, supply and demand. If you're in oversupply, and the demand isn't growing, then that suppresses the price. But I think, like I said, I outlined about 4 or 5 things there that would really help change the economics. So I don't want to make a prediction of doom and gloom going forward. I think we have plenty of things that if we lean into economically, we could really make this next fiscal year a great fiscal year for American agriculture.
I want to talk tariffs a little bit, and then we'll wrap up with Farm Bill 2.0. But I mean, some of the downturn in markets, we're talking that record crop we're expecting, you're talking that corn crop, but that and also soybean crop looking great as well. But some of the downturn in markets, especially when it comes to tariffs, is because of the president's trade policy. So I'm curious, do you think it's time for the president to reverse course on some of those things? I mean, we have this record crop and still not sure where it's going to go.
Yeah. Well, I think the president should lean into trade. Trade is really important. I mean, the trade policy of this country is one that was based on generosity. Actually, it was really a model based on post World War II, when most of Europe and Asia actually were in rubble following World War II, and so there was a purposeful decision that we would sort of disadvantage our country, because we knew in the long run, helping those countries rebuild, have stronger economies, it was going to be good for world peace in the future and stability. And so we chose to accept tariffs on our products and advantage those other countries. Well, this is 2025. And so we finally do have a president who's willing to do the hard work, and it's not easy. And so I think he needs I look forward to continuing to work with him and Ambassador Greer to lean in on trade. And there's a lot of moving parts with it. It looks chaotic when you got over 130 countries that you're negotiating with. But we just need to seal the deal on 2 or 3 here to provide ones that have really strong agriculture components. I hate to pick between commodity groups, because as ag chair, I feel like I'm picking between my kids. But strategically right now, because of the size and the situation that's going on, I would say let's put an emphasis of leaning on this first 2 to 3 trade agreements that are really strong for soybeans and corn and ethanol in terms of U.S. trade, our exports. But obviously we need to be looking at all of them. I think fruit and nuts right now are in the positive column in terms of trade, and that's great. Let's keep that up. The livestock industry, it's like 2 different farm budgets. I mean, livestock's doing really well for the most part. Milk's down just a little bit, but we're on the cusp of getting whole milk for healthy kids done. So that's a domestic program that will help on the milk side financially. It's a lot of people look at agriculture and farming and think, well, that's a pretty simple lifestyle. But it's not a simple industry. There's a lot of moving parts, and I guess I'm an eternal optimist. I think that we have the ability to really get some things done here, that will literally make agriculture great again.
And when you're talking those trade deals on crops, mentioning soybeans in particular, I mean, China, is that kind of what you're discussing as a market?
Well, China, at the same time, recognizing that China has been the apparent threat to the United States in some ways. It's Blue Water Navy and different things. We need to work really hard to retain those markets, but we see China now gravitating to Russia. I'm not saying back off from China. Those are important trade agreements. I thought we made so much gains with under Trump 45 with the China deal. Unfortunately, it really wasn't attended to for 4 years under the Biden administration. It was kind of ignored, and we lost all that momentum. I think we should try to do that. At the same time, it'd be smart to look for new markets. The African continent, different places that. New markets that we could open up for American agriculture. The best of all worlds would be to resume China, but also expand in other markets.
I want to also get your thoughts on Farm Bill 2.0, obviously pushing ahead to that this fall. You've mentioned that you want to take committee action in September. I'm wondering, first if that's the goal and what all you see you'd like to see included in that.
Yeah, the framework is pretty easy to start with. It's taking the Farm Food and National Security Act of 2024, and all we need to do is take out all the things that we put into law with the Farm Bill 1.0, that 80% of the Farm Bill, largest investment in the ag safety net since 2002, and whatever remains will be at the core of Farm Bill 2.0. Now we need to take a fresh look at it. We have new members on the committee. We've been working hard with the Republican side to get their ideas, their requests, and seeing how we can maybe incorporate those into it. We've already been doing that. I put a request into the ranking member, Angie Craig. She's a good friend. She has told me that she has received the priorities for the Democratic members, and we had a discussion last night on the floor, and I really would, requested we get those in the next 10 days. So we have 2 weeks so we can get those incorporated, because I think there are a lot of good programs that need to be reauthorized. Now, we're not under a real time crunch at this point. I know technically the Farm Bill portions that weren't reauthorized on July 4th, technically they expire on October 1st. But functionally, they're all funded right through the end of the calendar year. So we have time, but I think for giving our providing our farmers with the certainty that they need, and let's just call it the hope that they require too. The sooner that we can get 2.0 done and across the finish line, the better. So we're working in a bipartisan, bicameral, and with the administration on this.
And I'm curious, some of the more controversial provisions that you're considering within that, a legislative solution for Proposition 12, concerns about industrial hemp, lawsuits against pesticide manufacturers. I mean, if you want to maybe break down those three at least, and how you see those being
included. You're spot on. They're the ones we have and we saw that for the most part, although it wasn't, when we did the Farm Bill last time out of committee, last Congress, I was surprised it didn't get a tremendous amount of discussion. So fully anticipate the Save the Bacon provision will be in Farm Bill 2.0. The Supreme Court has made it very clear that it's not something they were going to fix, that there may be an issue with interstate commerce, one state dictating agricultural practices to other states. But it was, the justices, a number of the opinions clearly stated that's Congress's job, and we should do our job. So we are. So we'll have the Save the Bacon. It will respect states' rights to do internally whatever the states want to do. It's not going to interfere all with animal health laws within individual states. It's just a matter of one state shouldn't dictate to another state. So that'll be there. The pesticide labeling, I really believe that we need to be working with the EPA in terms of labeling for pesticide, and that if we open this up to 50 different states doing pesticide labeling, we're going to see people get hurt because of the confusion, the lack of continuity in terms of education practices, to beat the training requirements, the application guidelines. And so, the EPA has a massive amount of scientists. Most of them funded actually by the industry, so it's a great public-private partnership, and so I really believe that needs to be addressed within the Farm Bill, and then we'll have the hemp discussions. There's I think the Agriculture Committee's intent in 2018 was to address industrial hemp, food and fiber, but the way the language was, it left unfortunately some. Wasn't tight enough a definition, so there's been a lot of businesses have been created that use the hemp when it's hot, when it has an addictive quality. That was never the intent of the Agriculture Committee. Like the last Farm Bill, I will manage that process in committee, and we'll let the committee work its will on that, and whether that's one way or the other or some compromise in the middle, that's yet to be seen.
And still looking at a price tag of about $8 billion over 10 years.
Yeah, I
for
think
that?
it may be a little higher, but especially if we're going to incorporate some investments into, to deal with some of the economic issues that our farmers are dealing with.
How high do you think that could be?
I'm not sure at this point. I would think that an investment of was really pleased with what we got for $10 billion. Pretty impressive support for agriculture. Dealt with about a third of the losses. So if we can do an investment 2.0 that stimulates economic growth, maybe. So we'll say with the Farm Bill, $8 to $10 billion investments, and then maybe another. It would be wonderful to be able to replicate what we did in December.
And I also want to get your thoughts. Ag labor continues to be a major concern for
Huge.
America. You've teased a piece of legislation coming from the Ag Committee to actually reform the H-2A program.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you can walk us through that. And that's something that's been under jurisdiction of the Judiciary Committee. So walk us through that legislation and
Well, it is their jurisdiction to handle legislatively, although it's our responsibility because we know agriculture, right? We know the importance of agricultural workforce, and without agricultural workforce, you have food insecurity, and with food insecurity, you have rural economic insecurity and then national insecurity. And so we're using the findings of the agriculture worker task force that I put together last Congress. A great group of 16 members, 8 Republicans, 8 Democrats. I think we had 25 findings that they came out with. 15 of those were unanimous. Which was pretty impressive because those 16 members span the political spectrum, and for all of them to come on board. And then we had 5 additional ones that were approved based on a majority vote, so it was a strong vote. Can't do any better than unanimous, but majority vote's still pretty good among all those members. And so, that's been to Legislative Council. We've worked on that. We've taken that back out and talked with many of the commodity groups, both process and production, that have helped us with those ideas when they came in and testified over the course of a year. And right now, the step we're in right now is reaching out. It's a bit of a burden, but it needs to be done. We're looking for technical assistance with the administration. And I'm used to the Farm Bill where we reach out to USDA. Well, because of the scope and the nature of this, we're reaching out to USDA, we're reaching out to Homeland Security, we're reaching out to Department of Labor, and we're reaching out to the State Department. And so I'm encouraging those agencies to be very timely and responsive in terms of giving us technical assistance. Because to make this work, we want to make sure that we haven't missed anything, that the implications of administering it is any potential glitches that's out there. And then we'll be building a coalition around that, starting with the Agriculture Committee. Obviously, we'll be working with those secretaries and of those agencies and ultimately President Trump. Lydia, the big excuse, because I've really felt that we needed to do this for years. But the resistance I always got was they said the border is not under control. We can't do anything else until the border is under control. And I always thought, well, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We could do this. But that was not to be, obviously. And now the border is clearly under control, and not by the cartels, by the United States of America. So that reason is gone. And so I've had some discussions with the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and he recognizes that as well. The border's under control, and it's time to take that next step, especially when it comes to, providing a reliable workforce to America's #1 industry.
And as we wrap up here, I want to get your thoughts. The Agriculture Department has extended the USDA reorganization comment period from August 26th to now September 30th. You've been concerned about brain drain at USDA. Is this reorganization going to make that worse? Yeah,
it could. I mean, it's a reason to, some people just are looking for an excuse to retire, right? I get that part. And after you've made your home for maybe a decade or 2 decades one place, and your family's here, your family structure's here, to pick up and relocate to some other part of the country at the end of your career. For some people, they may welcome that, but for others, they may choose to retire. I think it's really important. One of the assets we have is wisdom that we have with our more experienced employees, people that are dedicated to the cause of agriculture, and so that is just that's a concern that I'm supportive of whatever decisions the administration makes, but it is a concern that I have certainly expressed.